Hey guys, Solomon here. I hope y'all are having a great day. Today's video, we're going to be focusing in on a couple of games played by Levy Rozman, aka GothamChess, in the Ponziani Opening. I'm a huge fan of the Ponziani. I think it's underrated, it's rare, it's dangerous, it's sound, all of the above. And Levy recently, somewhat recently came out with a video on the Ponziani, and the title of it was the best beginner chess opening. So that's pretty high praise for an opening, right? If you're saying that. But again, I'm a huge fan of this opening as well. There's a ton of traps, right? In fact, in my recent course, which I released, online course, which is nearly 4 hours in length, in chapter 6, I cover the top 15 traps for the Ponziani opening player. How many openings do you know of that have 15 traps? I myself, apart from the Ponziani, I can't really think of anything. I mean, even the Stafford Gambit doesn't have that many, right? The Danish, the Scotch Gambit. I mean, yeah, it's just a dangerous system. And on top of that, it's not one of those openings where we try to get a trap, and if the trap doesn't work, then we're losing. No, it's like, okay, we're still playing chess. In fact, oftentimes we're going to have a better position, right? So Levy had high praise for this opening, and on top of that, he went up against 2 subscribers, and I thought that both of those games showed some pretty instructive ideas. So I thought that we could show those on this channel and kind of analyze these games, both the good and the bad. Now, the Ponziani really starts out with this move of e4, and against e5, we're playing knight f3 and c3, preparing this d4 push. If you see a move like knight f6, there's multiple moves that you have available here, which I talk about in my course as well. But most of the time, we're just playing d4, right? We don't really care if you're going to take this pawn because we have d5 ready to go. And if this knight runs away, then we're going to even out this material, right? In this case, if e takes, which is what happened in the game, we're playing e5, aggressively kicking this knight around. Really the only move here that black has that doesn't just, drop the knight and doesn't include the knight running away somewhere is this move of queen e7, right? I mean, black they have to run away with the knight, or they have to play queen e7 because now this pawn is pinned. This pawn, I guess it can move, right? It can technically move to e6, but that does absolutely nothing for us. It's still pinned, by the way. And obviously black would just take it, and we can't take this knight, right? It's pinned to this king on e1. So in this case, we're going to take this pawn on d4, and in the game we have knight d5. Okay, now this is an interesting moment because we see Levy play this move bishop c4. I don't think that this is the best option because black can play knight b6 with tempo against this minor piece. I think a more sound move is actually knight c3, right? There's no way for black to get any kind of tempo on our piece that we just moved. If you play something like queen b4, we have bishop d2 ready to go. Notice that if you take this pawn, we win the knight. And if you take this knight on c3, we just capture back, right? Towards the center. Talk about central control. And if you see something like d6, bishop b5, pinning this knight on c6. This is a key idea in the Ponziani, by the way. If this pawn moves to d6, in a lot of lines, you're going to see bishop b5. This knight is pinned, so black here loses an attacking piece on that e5 pawn, and white here is in business. But in the game, we have this move of bishop c4. It's not like Levy made some kind of huge mistake here. Black did, though, with this move of queen b4 check. This just it just doesn't really do anything, right? We're just developing this knight and defending this bishop, right? We have to play this move. I guess you could play this too, but it's not great, right? And on top of that, this knight defends d4. In general, if you have 2 knights and you're thinking of blocking or coming to a square like d2, ask yourself which knight is better. And whatever knight is better is the one you're not going to move, right? Whichever knight is worse, you want to get into the game, right? If I have an active knight and an inactive knight, why would I want to just keep my active knight active and still have an inactive knight? Why wouldn't I want 2 active knights, right? So you're always trying to get your worst pieces to become better, right? And emphasis on that in chess as a whole. So, okay, we're getting that undeveloped piece developed. And here we have knight b6, attacking the bishop. We now have a3 from Levy, very strong move, just attacking this queen. Notice, by the way, how uncomfortable this queen is, right? In fact, as I'm looking at this, there's only a couple of squares where this queen can move without getting captured. We have queen a5, and okay, we just castle, right? Bishop e7. And here we have bishop d3. I actually like this idea from Levy, just kind of, reorganizing this bishop, aiming towards the king side of the board. Queen d5 was played. We now have bishop e4 and queen e6. Notice here in this position, y'all, white here has 2 very strong pawns, right in the center of the board. And in terms of central pawns, we have 2, black has 1. How did this happen? Well, this happened because way back here, we played the move of c3. We play d4, right? As the game starts, central pawns, I'm talking about pawns on the very center of the board, right, in front of the kings and the queens, the E and D pawns. In this case, it's 2-on-2, right? It's always 2-on-2 when the game starts. But if black ever takes on d4, we're not taken back with the piece, right? This isn't just central pawn for central pawn. I mean, I guess in a sense it is. But all of a sudden, our flank pawn, by the way, the C and the F pawns are considered flank pawns. Our flank pawn is now, very soon, after a move like e5, right, turning into a central pawn. So now we have a 2-on-1. And way later, right, all the way over to this position, I mean, this is paying off, right? Huge space advantage, very hard for black to navigate this position. Levy plays rook e1 just to kind of aim that rook towards the queen, keep options open just in case things, kind of break open in this game. And okay, we have castling kingside. We now have this move of knight f1 and knight b8 from black. Notice how awkward, knight b8 is, right? Just not a very fun move to play. It turns out that the computer move here for black is actually d5. Surprising, because this does allow us to take on d6. But, at the end of the day, this is really the only move that doesn't give white over a +2 advantage. Very slippery slope here for black. We have knight b8 and now d5. Right, notice this queen has absolutely nowhere to move, right? Levy has officially trapped the opponent's queen, unless black here took on d5 with the knight, in which case we just won a piece for a pawn. Okay, your queen's saved, but yeah, I mean, we're just up a piece for a pawn, not to mention a ton of development, and we're simply crushing this. Queen h6 was played. Levy just snatches off that queen and wins this game pretty quickly. Right, going back to c3, the second game we see is d5, in which case Levy plays queen a4. This is the move that I recommend in the course. I'm a big fan of this option, kind of pinning that knight to the king. And on top of that, looking at knight takes e5 ideas, which black often misses. In the game, we have knight f6, and Levy goes, okay, I'm going to take that pawn. This knight is pinned to that king on e8. D takes e4 is played, and now we have bishop b5. Levy actually touches on this at the end of the video, but bishop c4 is a better move. Okay, notice here again, this knight cannot move. And black really can't defend this pawn on f7 well at all unless they're going to play this move of bishop e6. All right, now in this case, we're going to take on c6. If you want to take my bishop, I'm taking your queen with check. We're in business. And if you take on c6, I'm actually not going to take this pawn right away. Because, okay, we're up a pawn, but black ends up getting some pretty nice compensation. Two bishops aimed towards our king side, and white there was some awkward development ahead. So instead, what's best is to take this bishop and then take on c6. Notice bishop d7 can't be played because there's no light squared bishop that exists on the board anymore. And yeah, I mean, black just has terrible pawn structure. Two isolated pawns, a pair of double isolated pawns. The queen can't move because the rook falls. If the king moves, which by the way, king f7 is the book move here. I mean, I'm taking white there any day of the week, obviously. And yeah, I mean, if the knight moves, there's plenty of things we can do, including just going up a second pawn and developing from there, right? But okay, after d takes, we see Levy go with this move of bishop b5. Bishop d7 is played. We now take on c6. Black here has to take with this b pawn, right? So that if we take back with the bishop, black can just kind of keep developing and go, look, you want a pawn, but I'm going to keep developing and try to put pressure on your king side. But here we have black take with the bishop, right? And you see this all the time in the Ponziani opening. It's very easy to slip up against it because here, I mean, we just take and we throw in a check, right? Again, queen here, thanks for the rook. King e7 in this case, very ugly. The bishop wouldn't be able to develop, which means the rook can't develop either. And if knight d7, which is a computer move and is what happened in the game, we're still fine, right? We take on e4, we check, we're up 2 pawns, and now we're just playing chess, right? We're just playing chess. We're up 2 pawns. If you're playing an opening and you end up, up 2 pawns at move 10 or 11, you've succeeded, right? The opening was a success. Now it's all about how can you play this middle game and how can you go into an end game, which is winning, right? And this is really what Levy focuses on here. We have development, right? I mean, the knight attacks the queen. We just drop the queen back. We have this move of rook e8. And here we have knight c4, right? And this is just very important, but very fundamental chess here from Levy, okay? If we're up in material, we want to trade down, right? It's going to make the game a lot easier for us. The way I think about it, the way I talk to my private students about it is, let's just say that there's a fight, right? There's a fight going on, okay? And, first off, don't fight, right? But, okay, let's say there's a fight going on. and there's a 10 on 8, right? 10 on 8. What's going to be a closer fight? What's going to be a closer matchup? 10 on 8 or 3 on 1? 10 on 8 is going to be a closer matchup, right? 3 on 1 is going to be pretty simple, but the difference in both of those is only 2, right? 3 minus 1 is 2, 10 minus 8 is 2, but the lower you keep subtracting the numbers, even though it's the same difference, it doesn't feel like it because the proportions do change. So here, I mean, in this case, if we can trade everything off but have this knight and a king endgame, it's game over, right? So here, white is trying to trade down and make this game, as simple as we can, really. And black here, in a sense, I mean, black, really that's a mistake. That just loses a piece for a pawn. But in a sense, I do like what black is going for because they're down in material and they're trying to make this game crazy, right? If black just sits around, they're going to lose. So black here is trying to do something. In fact, they're trying to check me on h2. The issue here is that we have multiple ways to defend this, right? And that's why bishop takes here is, in theory, right, there are moments where if you're down material, you want to make the game crazy, you want to go for it, and you also want to avoid trades. But in this case, the craziness doesn't lead to much because we just have queen h3. And black is now forced to take, and now we're up 4 points in material. We end up seeing this move of rook e1. Levy continues to trade down. Rook e2, not scary. We just actually force a trade there. King f7, knight e3. Notice just how much white is offering trades, right? Like every move or every other move, it's like trade, 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 trade. Here, black declines the trade, which is smart on their part. h4 was played by Levy, and now knight e3. Nice little fork. They get a pawn, but okay, I mean, now we're going to activate our king. Another key idea in endgames. In the opening, you don't want to march your king out to the center because you get checkmated. In this case, we're not worried about getting checkmated. I mean, black literally only has 5 pawns and a knight, so we're going to get our king in there. Keep making progress, right? There's really no rush. d5 would check. Bishop b4 would check. d6. Keep advancing that pawn, right? Past pawns must be pushed. And yeah, I mean, this pawn's just very solid, defended by our dark square bishop. a6 is played. We have bishop a3, just tucking that bishop back. g6, throwing a check. f4, right? Levy here just slowly improving his position, and now against f5, offering up yet again another trade. And this is exactly what we want, right? This kind of position. Now, we're up 3 points of material, right? So it's not like a ton has changed from way earlier in this game in terms of the material count. But if you look at this position, black has, unless white blunders here, black's simply going to lose, right? It's very simple now that there's not that much on the board. We simply have an extra piece, and it makes this game very simple, right? We see this idea of king e3. By the way, if black does take on e5, they win a pawn, but then we just make a queen. Right, and the king can't chase it back. So this king tries to get in the race, right, and stop that pawn. But now our king can just make progress, run down the board, right? Play king h6. By the way, this would be a terrible move if this bishop was not here. But because the bishop is, f4 doesn't work, right? Bishop c5, and we have this square covered. King d7 is played. We end up taking that pawn. And yeah, I mean, king c6, we drop this bishop back, right? This is one of those positions where you don't want to just go, oh, I have a passed pawn, let's push it. I know I just said push past pawns, but in a position like this, we're in no rush. We don't want to lose this bishop, which is defending this square. Because if we lose this bishop, then black's only 2 moves away from having a queen, right? So no rush here. Save the bishop, then continue pushing your pawns. In fact, we see this move, king f7, just kind of preparing the highway, radiator, spring style for this pawn. And yeah, black here resigns. Both great games by Levy. Showing off some awesome Ponziani opening ideas. I hope that you enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, let me know what you thought of Levy's play here. Again, I mean, really, there's not much that I can look at and go, oh my gosh, that's a terrible move, right? But what I will say is in this position, I think that bishop c4 is a better option, right? Because it more or less forces bishop e6. And in that case, we can take on c6, take on e6, take on c6 with check. Very specific order. And yeah, I mean, we're just up a pawn and white there with a great game. Thanks for watching today's video. If you haven't already, make sure to drop a like, subscribe to this channel, as well as hit that notification bell if you enjoyed it so that you don't miss out on anything that we got dropping soon. On top of that, I want to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of August in 2023. A big shout out to y'all, by the way, if you're interested in joining the Patreon community. We have some added benefits, including exclusive PGNs, for every single new Chess Giant video that comes out. And on top of that, we have a once a month session, in which case I go over patrons' personal games. These are just a couple of the benefits that we have recently added, and we're looking to add more. I'll see y'all in the next one.